Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. For our social media audience tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and now we're connected with our friends over on Instagram. We're glad you all could be with us here. In about 10 seconds, going to have our friends joining us on Amazon as well. We have a thought-provoking guest that's making her first appearance on our program, and we're live with you guys on Amazon Live for Cyrus Webb Presents. Glad you all could join us for another great segment. If you guys are new to us on Amazon, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button. You see it here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book and you see the title by our next guest. We're excited to welcome Dr. Candice Nicole Hargons to our broadcast. Her new book is right here. You guys can see it. It's called Good Sex. But not only that, stories, science, and strategies for sexual liberation. I'm going to talk to Dr. Hargons not only about the writing of the book, but what it's been like for her to see the conversations already coming in for it. For you guys joining us on Amazon, you guys can see you can get the hardcover there. You also have the Kindle edition that's there. And she was just telling me the Audible is available as well. We'll make sure we get it linked up for you guys. For those that are not joining us on the Amazon platform, there's a link that'll bring you guys over to Amazon to get the book for yourself. CI, hello to you over there on IG. I see you. I'll be speaking with you soon. But Dr. Hargans, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope you're doing well today.
I am. I'm excited about this conversation with you. And I think, for a lot of my audience who's followed me for 22 years, it may surprise them for me to have an author on the show with a book called Good Sex. But I will say this. I want our audience to know there's so much behind this title. So I want to talk about that, Dr. Hargans. What has it been like for you to get people's attention with the title, but then to get them into what you really are laying out, especially when it comes to intimacy and communication?
I think that to build the foundation for good sex, you have to have all of those inner workings. And intimacy, the way you relate to and get close to another person, the way you talk to someone about sex and about your relationship context really sets a good trajectory for you to have the type of sex that you are worthy of. And so many people, they feel a sense of taboo when it comes to conversations about sex. And so even though I start with that as the title, I really try to relieve some of that pressure, some of that anxiety by saying, this is a normal aspect of the human experience, something that all of us had to come here through. And so maybe there are some other things about sex that you're curious about that this book will provide you an opportunity to explore.
And I think that what is so interesting is that you do open up the dialogue, Dr. Hargans, but also I was surprised at how, because a lot of times when I've read books like this and preparing for interviews, I'm not used to necessarily seeing the author or the expert in the book. Was that something you knew you wanted to do in writing Good Sex, or was that something that just seemed to fit because of what you were being able to share?
I knew that I needed to do that because authenticity is really important to me. And because I'm citing experiences of research participants that I've worked with and a fictionalized rendering of clinical cases that I've worked with as a licensed psychologist, I didn't think it was fair or appropriate for me not to introduce myself as a human in that experience as well. And like I say in one of the chapters, I'm not the final boss in good sex. I am on a journey, just the way that I expect that people who are reading this book are on a journey. And so I share parts of my story, ones that seem especially relatable depending on a person's context, so that they know that I'm a human just like they are.
Dr. Harkins, I mentioned the subtitle of the book. They can see it there, Stories, Science, and Strategies for Sexual Liberation. I want to talk about the science for a moment. That was one of the most as a science person myself, that was
Yes.
one of the most fascinating parts for me. What was it like for you to be able to get people to thinking about the not only the science of intimacy and togetherness, but also the impact that that can have?
I'm a big nerd. So I love science. I love conducting research.
Hmm.
And I've been doing it for over a decade in my career. And it was just like I could not write this book in good conscience without integrating that science in there.
Yeah.
Much of it is the science of people who have been sex researchers longer than or as long as I have, but also research studies that my team and I have conducted on our own. And I used it in a way that was accessible because I don't want my best research locked behind academic paywalls. Like nobody's reading my peer reviewed articles unless you're a colleague or really nerdy like me. But I know that I want my grandmother and my friends to be able to read some of the things. And so I take the science and translate it in a way that is accessible and resonates with people so that they can still have access to that good material and also apply it to their lives.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things that you talk about in the book, and I can't say I necessarily expected this, Dr. Hargons, and that is, and I was just thinking about the reference so I can talk around this for those who haven't read the book yet, is that how this is something that it can be generational for some people in the way that they look at things, but also having to do with their upbringings, where they come from, how they're looked at. And it kind of goes to me, what I thought was so fascinating about the book is that it really shows, like in everything, none of us are monoliths. What was that like for you to explore? I'm sure on the surface you knew that already, but what was it like for you to kind of see it in action through the examples and stories you shared?
So I call them cultural recipes, and I use the metaphor throughout of it being like a menu. Good sex is a menu that we have an option for, and that we get to curate the menu based on these good sex ingredients, which I call seasonings. And so your recipes that you get, the ones that are force fed to many of us, are these unseasoned cultural recipes around what sex is and what it should be. And they come from our religious traditions and our family systems and medicine and science and politics and all of these areas, school, education. And most of us get a really narrow window and don't get to see ourselves in it. And so I wanted to make sure I was bringing in the stories, bringing in the science, and even bringing in some of those personal experiences that helped everybody get a glimpse of who they were in the book, as opposed to thinking about this as a somebody else issue, but that most of us got messages around sex being a taboo topic to talk about. Most of us got messages around like being a moral person, and an upstanding person means that you can't say certain things or do certain things. And that may apply well to yourself and your values, and that's okay. That's sexual liberation. But what if it doesn't? What if there are some other things that you never got a chance to learn that would have really been helpful for you throughout your developmental lifespan? And I like to bring those things in and bridge that gap.
I don't know this for a fact, Dr. Hargons, because you and I did not discuss it, and I purposely don't script this show because
Right.
I like to have the freeness of speech and the dialogue like this. But just from reading the book, I'm going to make an assumption, and you can
Okay.
just tell me if I'm right or not. I can imagine that you helped a lot of people to feel seen just by telling their stories and validating their stories. Was that something that you felt or have experienced in the conversations?
I really appreciate you for saying that because that's one of my core goals as a psychologist and as a researcher. I do a lot of qualitative research, which means I'm sitting with people or groups of people and listening to their stories. And I build on those psychology skills by affirming and welcoming and normalizing many of the things that they describe. There's this popular saying now, we listen and we don't judge. And so that's the way I approach the work that I do, because who am I to judge? First of all, like,
Yeah. But it's interesting. Okay, let's pull on that string a little bit more because I think that's interesting because one thing that you do talk about though is that fear of judgment that so many people
mhm,
have, right? Which is what causes sometimes the disconnect and the
mhm.
dysfunction that they feel in their own satisfaction and also in their own relationships. Do you hope a conversation piece like this will kind of open up that door to let people know, for one thing, that that's part of the liberation too, and also that that's something that they can be able to benefit from?
Absolutely. A part of the liberation is that judgment will likely continue to exist in the world, but you don't have to participate in it.
Mhm.
And that means you don't have to be a person who's a vehicle of judgment, nor do you have to put so much validation or need for approval around what other people say to and about you. And so I think that is such a cornerstone of liberation, where it's like, I understand that these judgments exist, but are they congruent with my values and how I see myself? Am I worthy, regardless of how people see me and judge me and evaluate me? And can I incrementally, because most of us are raised to be judgy, how can I incrementally reduce my judgment of others and open myself to seeing people for who they are, respecting and affording dignity to people as they are?
I tell people we all have heard the saying, Dr. Harkins, timing is everything, right?
Mhm.
But there are so many people right now in this moment that do feel judged. They do feel closed off. They do feel unappreciated, right? And what their experiences are that too. How does it feel to know that even with so much uncertainty that people may be feeling, that through conversations like this, that you're letting them know that people do see them and that these conversations need to be had?
My hope is that it helps reduce the distress that a lot of people are experiencing. Um, the fear and uncertainty may not be something that you can change,
Hmm.
but that people can choose curiosity and courage anyway.
Yeah.
And so because I wrote it in a way that hopefully resonates with people and helps them feel seen, that they know somebody's looking for them and somebody's potentially looking out for them. And
Yeah.
that can be a catalyst to choose courage,
Yeah.
even when you feel afraid.
Even when you feel afraid, which is so important. Tamika, I see you over there on Facebook. And I see you guys over there on Amazon as well. If you guys have a question for Dr. Harkins, make sure you guys put it in the chat. Let me reset real quick, Dr. Harkins, and say for those who are just tuning in, welcome. You all are watching Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live, but we are simulcasting this on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on Instagram. We have Dr. Candice Nicole Hargons is our guest. She's the author of this book. You guys see the title, but I'm not afraid to say it. It's called Good Sex. The subtitle of the book is Story, Science, and Strategies for Sexual Liberation. It is available here on Amazon, both in hardcover, Kindle, as well as the audiobook as well. I want to talk about something selfish for a moment, Dr. Harkins, and that is the satisfaction of the work you've done, but of being a published author. What has that title been like for you to embrace?
It is a lifelong dream. I mean, I have been writing since I could write. So as early as 6 and 7, I have journals that go back like to 9 and 10 where I'm writing stories and poetry and big, like all, all types of things, plays. And to be able to write a book that I wanted to write, I'm so grateful to my publisher, Row House, because they allowed me to have my authentic voice in it. So when I put this first book out, this is my debut book out, I knew it represented me well. And I share with my husband, we were talking about what this means to me. And I was like, this is my first and worst book. And it's
Hmm.
still a book I love, but every day I like to write and get better at it and think about new things. And so I plan to write more books. And I'm just happy that this one was the one that started it for me.
Well, I don't know if people would agree it's the worst. I do want to share some news with you at the time we're having this conversation, Dr. Harkins. Your book is number 9 in new releases here
Wow.
on Amazon under sexual instruction ebooks. There you are, right there. Look at you. Number 9. I mean, when you see that, I mentioned the conversations earlier, but when you see that the proof of it here on Amazon, that people are paying attention, do you feel as though you're doing exactly what you wanted to do with this dialogue and conversation?
Absolutely. Yeah. My hope is that when people read it, so that not only they buy it, but when they read it, they feel it in a way that makes them want to talk about it and share it with others because it has been impactful for them, because it has helped them along their liberation journey. So I have the goal of selling so many books, not just because I want to sell so many books, but
Sure.
because what I can do as a licensed psychologist one-on-one is very limited, but what I can do as an author has a much broader reach.
Yeah. What was the most difficult part for you? I would imagine as a reader it would be the research, but I'm curious for you, what was the most difficult part of the book?
Surprisingly, the research, well, maybe not surprisingly, because my day job is a scientist. That was the easiest part.
Gotcha.
Writing it while I was pregnant
Oh, okay. Okay.
and then nursing and
Yeah.
like the managing my energy and my
Mm,
consistency in a time where I'm growing a whole human, that was the most difficult part. But I really did also feel in touch with like my creativity and my joy. And so I think I was balancing both of those, just needing to take a 2 hour nap in the middle of a writing episode, stuff
yeah.
like that made it tough.
Right. Yeah. Does it talking about, I mean, the critical aspect of this though, because again, I referenced the interesting thing about where we're living right now, where there are so many advancements in 2025, Dr. Hargans, but that has not necessarily equated to mindset shifts.
Mhm.
So are you surprised by that? That a book like this would still be considered controversial in 2025?
No, I'm certainly not surprised. I'm a little
Okay.
bit sad by it.
Yeah.
But what I know about human behavior is that it takes a lot from knowledge to insight. So you can read something and learn something and not change the way you think about it yet. And then it takes even longer from insight to behavior change. So you can read something, digest it, and be like, oh, I really want to do it. And then it takes years to be able to do it for a lot of people, for most people. So the way history works and the way humans work, no, I'm not at all surprised that talking about sex feels taboo to some people and that people are still having challenges and hiccups around it. But what I'm encouraged about is that people are willing to buy it and give it a shot, whether or not they get to the insight. That's, something about whatever's going on in their world, but that they're willing. That's a really good first step.
Love that. Again, everyone, Dr. Candice Nicole Hargons has been our guest. The book, as you guys can see there, is Good Sex, available now through our friends at Amazon.com. Again, as I mentioned, already an Amazon hot new release. Dr. Hargons, thank you so much for writing this book, being a part of this conversation with our audience. Let our viewers know, how can they stay connected with you?
You can stay connected with me on Instagram, Threads, Facebook. Those are the places that I typically am. And on my website, drcandicenicole.com, you can find out about me and the research that I do and any upcoming projects as they may arise. Thank
Love
you.
that. Love that. Thank you again. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. Looking forward to our next chat together.
Thanks. Take good care.
You as well. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. Again, for you guys joining us on Amazon, make sure you guys hit that one click. As you guys can see, you can get the Kindle edition there. You also can be able to get the paperback edition, the hardcover edition as well. It's on sale right now here on Amazon. So definitely make sure you guys take advantage of that. And as you can see too, the audiobook is there too. And again, make sure you guys are staying connected with Dr. Hargons as well. Until next time, I'm Cyrus Webb saying thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.